Good day, everyone. I'm your host, James Hicks from Hicks New Media. Welcome to Perspectives in Focus, where we highlight the people, industries, ideas, and the technology that are making positive strides within society today. Today, my guest is Mr. Kirby Hasseman. We've been chopping it up behind the scenes already, so we could have already had another show already, but so you are definitely in for a treat today. The topic that I want to talk about is personal marketing for professional development, and this kind of stems off of a book of his that I read. But before we get into that, let me talk to you a little about who this man is. Kirby is the CEO of Hasseman Marketing and Communications, which is a full service marketing and promotional products distributor. Kirby has served on a number of boards. He has been named as a rising star in the industry by PPB Magazine. Recently, out of hundreds of thousands of industry professionals, he was recognized as a top social media influencer on various industry lists. Kirby hosts a weekly web show called Delivering Marketing Joy. I love that topic. I love that title. Where he interviews business leaders from around the country. In addition, he puts out the Monday Minute, which is a short video on personal development. He does that on a weekly basis. And then he also hosts in his spare time. He hosts the podcast Promo Upfront with his co-host, Mr. Bill Petrie. When he's not doing that, when he's not being a grandfather, when he's not doing all these other things, Kirby also writes books. And listen, he's already published four. His first book was called Think Big Marketing for Small Business. Another book called Delivering Marketing Joy, Fan of Happy, and then most recently, The Give First Economy, which is where I was turned on to Mr. Hasseman. Without that, let's go ahead and get into it. I see some folks in the comments already who are in the promotional business as well. Mr. Graham, I see you. Mr. Alec Johnson, we were talking about you behind the scenes, so welcome to you from the future. Let's get into it, y'all. When the man is not doing all the other things, he's sitting at that chair right there. Kirby Aspen, how are you, sir?
I am doing amazing. I could not be more excited, James, to
Okay.
be here. This is a truly an honor. You and I, got connected because I heard you talking about my book, and it like made my month. It was really cool to be have somebody talking about something that you wrote, and then kind of reading it back to you, and it made my day, and
Awesome.
I really appreciate the opportunity to be here talking with you, man.
Awesome. Awesome. I appreciate that. Listen, it resonated. I was asked by Mr. Alec Justin, who again I state is in the comments right now, to talk about a recent book that I read. And I said, you know what? I know a guy, I wish I had the physical book, but I'm an audio book guy, so I'm an
Me
Audible
too.
man. If you could, I tell you what, gave you kind of highlights of who my community is, right? Solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, content creators, things of that
Yeah.
nature. But I never want to let folks not tell their origin story. Right. So if you could give kind of that 30-second pitch of who is Kirby Hasseman. I know I gave a brief monologue, but it
Sure.
always sounds better coming from the originator themselves.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, I'm in the marketing space, but what I would say is I was one of those people, and I think a lot of people are like this, that was sort of born an entrepreneur. I didn't know what that word meant, right? But I was sort of born that kind of person. I started my first business at 8 years old with a partner. We started a bike repair business, right? And what I found out quickly is I could sell because this was before social media. It was before all that sort of thing. And I just went door to door, and I knocked on doors and found somebody who would allow me and my partner, who was also 8 years old, to fix the bike. And we got the bike back to my garage, and I learned something really quick. Number one, I don't know how to fix bikes at all. Um, and so quickly we pivoted to a bike washing business. And so this woman was kind enough to let us do that. And I learned a couple things. Number one, I am an entrepreneur. Number two, I'm pretty good at sales. And number three, if you want to succeed in business, you can't be full of it. You have to actually be able to deliver on what you're going to do. And so that kind of spun me forward into a career of kind of starting businesses and selling and now creating content. And it's been a pretty fun ride, man.
I love it. I love it. Listen, we are streaming. I normally don't even stream on LinkedIn anymore, but we are. I've got the not just my personal profile. I've got the organizational page up, and someone is out there saying, "Listen, I know this guy. He's famous." Okay, well,
hardly, hardly, but that's
follow
nice. I'll take
follow my page on LinkedIn so it'll show your name next time you leave a comment right there instead of just being the generic LinkedIn user. Uh,
That's funny.
so let's start it with that, right? Where really did that need or that desire, that influence need to do entrepreneurship, to start your own business? Why at such
Mhm.
an early age? Was that something kind of originated from your parents, or was that something that just from your surroundings? Why did you see being an entrepreneur, controlling your controlling your destiny, owning your own business, or just managing things from that perspective? Why did you gravitate towards something like that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it's one of those things that my grandfather, my grandpa Bob, was sort of my first entrepreneurial influence.
Hmm.
I just saw that he had a little carry out in a little town in Ohio, and he worked another job, and this whole carry out was like a side hustle. And he was one of those guys that I think was an early influence. And I was like, I loved the idea of being a business person, of being, someone who created something. And I think that it started early. One of my things I would say is, public education is great. I had a great education, but especially at that time, I don't know that they spent a lot of time talking about starting your own business. It was, you got an education so you could get to college, so that you could get an education and get a job and all that stuff. And to a degree, I think for a while I took a detour where I was like, okay, I should just be getting a job. And my wife actually went down the path of getting a straight commission sales job.
Okay.
And I would be working 60 hours a week in the corporate side. And I kept looking at her going, every time we need to make more money, she's like, okay, I'm just going to go sell more. I'm going to go make more money. And she could do it. Whereas it didn't matter how hard I worked over here. I made what I made, and
Right.
it was great. And I just kept feeling the pull that I was sort of gravitated back to the idea that I wanted there to be some link to how hard I worked to how much I made. And I've always sort of enjoyed that idea, I think.
I love. Is that something that you think is? Here I'm already pivoting. I've got the run of show here. I've got the things I want to talk
I'm
about.
at
Is
it.
that something that you think is effectively taught within school? And I wonder. I don't know if that needs to be taught necessarily at the high school level, but again, when you step to the advanced education, when you get into college, is that taught enough in school? Like public speaking should be, like balancing a
Yeah.
checkbook used to be or should be. That
So no.
entrepreneurship, that kind of mentality of
Yeah.
again, you put in the work, this is what you get, and you bear the fruits of those labor. Do you think that's taught enough?
I think it has historically not been taught at all. Um,
I set
right?
you up. I
Like,
kind of set you
yeah,
up.
yeah. Now, what I would say is, and I want to give credit where credit is due. I think that public education, high school. I actually do think we should be talking about it in high school, to
Yeah,
be honest with you,
yeah,
James, because I think there are so many kids that have just, it's been the same concept that you do this, then you do this, then you get a job and you work for somebody else.
yeah.
And I think that the idea of being able to, number one, we need to tell people that it's an opportunity and let their minds run with it. Because I think people who are natural born entrepreneurs, and those are among us, all they need is a nudge and then they're going to go. And then the other piece I think we need to talk about is the idea of what success means. We
Mm,
need to redefine what success means. You and I, before we started talking about our kids, right?
yeah.
And I started talking about starting businesses with my kids at a very early age, right? When they wanted money to get something, I'm like, well, what kind of business could you start where you could make that happen? So the story I always use is that my youngest, she wanted an iPad. And at one point I was like, okay. And it was like $500 at the time. And she said, okay, I'll start a business. And so we helped her design these shirts that we printed because that's what we do, right?
Right.
Well, then she took them home, tie-dyed them, took them to a local festival, sold them, made her $500 so she could buy her iPad, shut down her business, and moved along with her life. And I would define that as a radical success.
Yes.
But it's funny to me because people say, well, most businesses fail within a year or 5 years. Did they though? Like, I think we need to redefine success. Gary Vee talks about that a lot of times. He's like, oh, people think you got to make $1 million, otherwise you're not succeeding. And I think that's crap.
That's true.
And
I
so,
like that.
yeah. So I think number one, I think we're getting better. We're having that conversation. I think it needs to be more. And honestly, I don't think, and I'm probably going off on a tangent, just like, you are there,
That's
but
what I
like,
do.
it's like,
That's what I
yeah,
do all the
yeah,
time.
we're on
So,
the same page.
welcome to the world. This is what we
Yeah,
do.
that's right. But what I would say is one of the conversations I'm actually having in a local high school is we want to introduce entrepreneurship, but I don't think we want to spend 3 years teaching a course. That's not how entrepreneurship works. I think we need to give people the basic concepts and then go, okay, here's $500, start a business. Whoever makes the most money wins, because that's what business is.
I like
right?
that.
Is
I
that you
like
need
that.
to find a problem in your community, in your area, solve that problem, figure out a way to monetize it, and take care of your customers and see what happens. And so I think it starts pretty simple, and then we can make it more complicated as we go.
Awesome. And see, even though we pivoted a little bit, that brings us back slightly to kind of the comment and the topic for the day. And that LinkedIn user was your co-host, Mr. Bill Petrie. So
Nice.
welcome, sir. Good to have you
Thanks,
here.
Bill.
Adam Town, good to have you here as well, sir. Let's talk a little bit about personal branding, right? Because again, we're talking about entrepreneurship a little bit here, and you are always that founding member, that founding CEO, that founding individual is the face of that organization. So how do you go about effectively branding yourself from a personal perspective and then attaching onto it kind of that professional persona as well, right? What are some key best practices that you're talking to people, and especially I think the youth, right? When you're out there, maybe at a local college or something, or at a high school or something, talking to folks. I want to start a business. I want to start a side hustle. I want to do something with my name on it. How do they go about branding themselves effectively and above the noise? Because there's a lot of noise out there, right?
Boy, that's for sure. Man, so I'm going to have a lot of thoughts, and feel free to interrupt me. So number one, we talked about it before, giving first. I think that one of the challenges that most small businesses, most entrepreneurs make, one of the mistakes is that they, it's buy from me, buy from me, buy from me. If you're on social media, we talked about Gary Vee. Gary Vee talks about it. Jab, 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 right hook. Yep. Most small businesses, most entrepreneurs, all they're doing is throwing right hooks, right? And if you know a right hook's coming, it's easy to duck. And so, one of the things I like about the concept of the give first economy is that if you're providing value up front, people will opt into what you are talking about. And then when you've built a little bit of credibility with them, if they're following a business page, they're going to expect you at some point to try and sell, right?
Yeah.
But if you're always selling, then it becomes off-putting and they can stop following you. There's more power in the consumer's hand. And for you and I, James, that's good. Right? Because that means otherwise our Facebook feed would be filled with ads all the live
the wrong
long day,
ads.
Right?
Yeah, the wrong
right,
ads.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So number one, I'd say give first, provide value. And that might be writing articles that answer questions. And that's when I'm talking to people all the time, it's like, what are the top 10 questions you're asked all the time, right? If your customers are asking that all the time, those are questions that you can answer and create a piece of content, and it will be valuable. Now, that might be a blog post, a video, a podcast, whatever. The platform actually doesn't matter that much, I don't think.
That's huge,
but,
right?
Yeah. Providing value. And I think, when you do that, at some point then, you're going to say, hey, we have a webinar coming up. We have a sale coming up. I want you to come to the store. And I think when you've provided a great deal of value, then when you ask, then people are like, yeah, absolutely. There's, the rule of reciprocity kicks in a little bit.
Yeah. So let me ask this though, because, and again, I want to pay kind of the doubting Thomas, or just to have the dialogue, right? All entrepreneurs are energetic and want to do something. They have that idea. They said, you know what, I want to go out there, and I've got the quote from my old boss, Steve Jobs here. I want to put a dent in the universe, right? I know that I want to do that, but it seems so overwhelming at times to
Mm.
we know to go out there and curate the content, but I
Yeah.
like the fact that you just talked about varying forms of content. So not just textual, not just audio, not just video, components of all of those. So talk a little bit about, again, I like to talk about getting out of our own way,
Yeah.
right? So the fact that we know what we should be doing, but why
Yeah.
is it that we're not realizing that it's not that difficult to get out there, and you've got your phone with you all the time anyway, to
Yeah.
create a piece of content that resonates with you as that personal brand and as that professional persona as well. Why
Mhm.
do you think it's so difficult for us to know what we got to do but don't do it?
Oh man, I think that has to do with the voice in our head. Personally, you know what I
Mm,
mean? Like number one, I think so. There's two things. There's the sort of the voice of perfection, right? That says,
yeah, I like.
that
Okay.
it's got to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I can't put it out there if it's not perfect. And almost always that's an excuse,
Mm-hmm.
right? That is a way for us to get away from doing the work. Seth Godin talks about that all the time. But I also think it's worth mentioning the voice in our head, because I think, James, the people who watch your show, the people who watch me speak, whatever, I think they believe that we don't have that voice in our head. They believe that that's only us, like, because we've all got the voice that says I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, and doggone it, people don't like me, nobody cares what I have to say. And I think we all have to overcome that voice. We have to hear that voice and say, no, I'm going to push record anyway. And then once you push record, you have to push publish. And I think the way to get over that, other than just gritting your teeth and bearing it, is to understand that you're actually providing someone value. You're actually helping someone down the journey of whatever path your organization helps them, right? And I think when you do that, it does alleviate the idea that you're trying to sell, because the reality of it is you have to at some point. That's the doubting Thomas that I hear all the time. Hey man, I got to make money at some point. You totally do. But I think what content does is it lifts you up, right? It lifts you up and puts you on a pedestal as an expert, right?
Mm,
It
mm-hmm.
doesn't mean you shouldn't try and sell.
Yeah.
I never said that, right? Like, and I think both things should be true. But the sales conversation, we both know this. There's going to be a little bit of adversarial, right? We're sitting on the opposite side of the
Always.
the
Yes.
table, right? And you have money, and I want it from you.
Yeah.
Um, but what content does is it changes the conversation in the funnel. It changes when people are, all of a sudden they come in and they say, James is the person. I've been watching James for all this time, and he's done this and he's done this, and he's proved that he's an expert. So now I need to go down this path. I already know James is the expert. And so it's not a question of whether I'm going to buy. It's a question of what James recommends,
Mm-hmm.
because whatever he recommends, that's what I'll do. And that's a totally different discussion.
It's a discussion that needs to happen internally with the subject, that the quote unquote subject matter expert ourselves,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And again, I like the fact that you mentioned something to the fact that, yeah, we go through burnout as well.
Oh,
We
yeah.
do, right? Because that's a reality that I think the external folks, the folks within our community, the folks who are looking to us to provide some expertise or be that trusted advisor. Listen, I got a text this morning from one of my colleagues who was saying she has been burnt out from creating
Yeah.
content and
Yeah.
being quote unquote on all the time. But as long as you address that, as long as you realize that, and I think really as long as the folks around us acknowledge and realize that we go through that as well as content creators, we don't have to worry about trying to be perfect all the time.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer, James, and I can tell you are as well, in consistency. I actually
Yeah,
think it's the missing piece in most success
yeah,
in most areas of our life,
true,
right? Like
true.
I always draw the comparison of, I believe content creation is a lot like fitness,
Yes.
right? Like we're like, okay, I went to a conference, I'm excited, I'm going to do it. And then I go for like 2 weeks and nothing has happened. I don't have 6-pack abs yet. Right. And so I don't have 1 million followers yet. Right. And I haven't gained my sales. I'm tired of doing it. I'm sore. I don't have any ideas. And you know what? Never mind. And so then we quit. And
Quit.
then we say that diet plan didn't work.
Yeah.
Right. That workout didn't work, which is the same as content creation. And it really has to do with showing up consistently, whether it's every day or every week or whatever it is. Now, I say that to say to your friend is just like a fitness program, there are times where you need to take a break. You need to take a vacation. You need to take a rest day.
Yeah.
And I think what I talk about a lot is doing that intentionally, right? So if you're doing a weekly show and you do it all the time, there might be a season that you're like, you know what, man, the kids are off to college. This is happening and I need a month off. The way that I view that is to do it and say, yep. And you tell the audience, I'm taking a month off, just like Seinfeld did, right? They took time off because,
Yeah.
and I think by doing it and then saying, and this is when I'll be back, not only does it build that credibility with the audience, but it sort of builds in some accountability for yourself.
Exactly.
You get the break, but now it's like, okay, I got to be back. And I think that helps, at least for me, think through the burnout part, because that's real.
True.
When you're trying to come up with ideas and she said, be on all the time.
Yeah.
I think by giving yourself the grace to say, hey, some days I'm going to need a vacation, and that's okay.
That's it. Giving yourself the grace. I like those terms right there. Giving yourself the grace, and then the fact of realizing that you have to step back with intention. Right. Again, the statement there, because again, we'll do it haphazardly, or we'll do it just telling ourselves as opposed to telling the folks that we serve. Folks should realize we don't create this content for ourselves.
Yes.
I'm nowhere in the equation. This is for the Rich Grahams and the Alec Johnsons and the Adam Towns and the Jeremy Pickers of the world right here. Right.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing is to share these nuggets and to share this information. And once we get out of that framework of I'm doing this for me, no, I turn these lights on and press record because I want to talk to this cool guy, Kirby Hasseman, right now and hear his story. I'm just here soaking it up and enjoying. I got my pen so I can take some notes. And I think once folks, the content creators, the subject matter experts, the trusted advisors, whatever you want to call us, once we realize that, then we can actually be more of an effective educator, instructor, facilitator, and things that, regardless, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be content creation, it could be marketing, it could be promotions, it could be whatever that business venture you're doing. Once you consciously and with intention realize who you're doing it for.
Yeah.
It gets easier to do.
Yeah. And I love what you were talking about when you're saying you started with the idea of serving. The other thing I would say too, James, is I think it's important to say, okay, number one, the voice, right? And the other thing to say is there will be times you don't feel like it.
Yeah.
And that's not defeatist at all. It is to say, no, it's natural. So if you are in doing this and you've been doing it for a couple months and you're like, man, I'm tired. That's natural, right? A quick story. So when I started doing Delivering Marketing Joy, I'm over 400 episodes now, right? So I do it every Wednesday.
Yes.
The consistency is something that's key.
Yeah.
I did it when I started doing it. It was like almost 8 years ago.
Okay.
And so there wasn't a lot of it happening. And so I'd done 20 episodes and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm kind of good, right? Like I'm kind of done. Like I didn't have an episode lined up for the following week. Well, I had the opportunity with a friend of mine, Mark Graham, who had set up an interview. So he and I got an opportunity to interview Seth Godin, who's one of my personal heroes, right?
I get his email every morning.
Right, me too.
I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. And so I'm getting ready to interview him, and it was on a live podcast like this. And so we're talking right before we go live, and Mark's like, this is Kirby. He does this show called Delivering Marketing Joy. And he goes, oh yeah, I've seen your show. I was like, okay. And he said something to me I'll never forget. He said, it's really good. Keep doing it. In 3 years, you'll be glad you did. Wow. And I was like, 3 years? I don't have next week. But it was like, I was probably at, like I say, episode 20, something like that. And I was like, okay, it was my call to action to, okay, I need to keep going. And then it became a lesson that was really valued to me, that it was, when in doubt, just do one more. Like I'm so fascinated, like literally I'll be a part of content creator groups and they'll say, look, man, the audience engagement isn't as high and I'm not as excited about it. And this is happening and this is happening. What do you think I should do? And I'll be, do one more tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's my advice. Just keep going.
Dude, that's huge. I was purposely quiet because that's going to be the clip right there. That's going to be blown up all over the social networks, that clip right there. So thank you for that. It's hard for me to ever be quiet, but that was good. My goodness, we got some great comments coming in as well. Robert, I see you, man. Appreciate you for joining here. So transparency, the key in setting the tone of how
Mhm.
you address burnout. Yes, I like
Love
that.
that. Yeah, that's a great point.
Jeremy is saying he's in the burnout phase. It's a dark cloud hanging over him daily. I am building the content, but can't seem to get to launching it right now.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that. I think we kind of hinted to some of those things. We'll
Yeah.
get into kind of these phases of content creators as well that I wanted to talk about, and the book as well. But that's a call for assistance right there from Jeremy. I think, right.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
building the
I
content, but can't seem to get to launching it right now. How do we get
so
him to the next point?
to me, that's and again, I want your take on this too, but to me, that is an exercise in perfection, right? If you've built it and you can't launch it, you're too worried to a degree on, okay, is it not good enough? And, I think if that's true, Jeremy, then I think the challenge is chasing perfection is a pointless exercise. It doesn't, perfection doesn't exist. And the other thing I would also say, James, and I don't know if this is true for you, but one thing that I've found is I never know that what's going to work the best. There are so many times that I think something is the best thing I've ever created. And no one cares.
Yeah.
No one cares. And like that happens more often than I'd care to admit. Like I'll write something and I'll be like, oh my gosh, this is going to change the internet. And it'll get 3 views. No one cares. And then I'll put something together that I'm like, okay,
you do
I need
something
to,
else real fast.
yeah, I'm gonna get this together. And then, oh man, this does really well.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that's the thing that lets me off the hook that says, I don't know if it's good. The audience will tell me, but I have to push publish to find out.
That's the right answer. Right. Again, I mean, it really is, right? Just pushing through and getting, again, as I keep saying, getting out of our own way, right? That's the right answer to create something that brings value.
Mm-hmm.
Give first, back to the book,
Mm-hmm.
and let it marinate out there with the community, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't know how something that you say, that you write, that you take a picture of, whatever, is going to touch someone at that particular moment when they may need that particular piece of content. You may have 4 or 5 misspellings. All of these lights could go off while we're talking.
Yep.
These cameras could undo, but something we've said in this past 15 to 20 minutes has already touched someone to either spring into action or to say, let me think about it this way. So we don't know. We're not clairvoyant to know what that is.
Yeah, it was funny you say that because literally I posted a video today. And I had, and well, this is what the best part of this is, right? That one person disagreed with everything I said in the video. And then in a respectful, it was a great conversation.
Yeah.
But 2 or 3 people said, I didn't know I needed to hear this today.
There you go.
And it's like, I think sometimes we just need to hear things from a different voice. I remember Mark Manson's book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving.
That's in my queue. Okay, I had to think about it. I know that author.
It's a really good book.
Yeah.
If you are offended by cursing, you should not listen to it.
Okay. That's actually next up in my queue. So, okay.
Yeah. It's really good. But he said several things, and I remember thinking, I've heard this before, but I've never heard it just like this. And it was the way I needed to hear it in that moment. And so I think as you're creating content, part of the deal is putting it out there, and it might be the way that person needs to hear it today.
Yeah. God, that's great. That's amazing right there. That's bringing value right there, straight off the cuff. And Jeremy is saying, thanks, Bill. Need to do that. It's a battle. I'm confident that I'm giving value, but it's self-confidence or low self-esteem or whatever it is. Those are deeper seated issues, I know, but discipline is my nemesis. And Mr. Petrie is there. If you want to come on screen, I can send Bill. I can. we can do this 3-way right here, right? I love the fact
I happen to know Jeremy, and he's an incredibly talented guy. And I think that sometimes when you are creative and talented like that, you want it to be amazing. And I will tell you, Jeremy, it's going to be great.
Awesome. I love that. Great reinforcement there. And again, you start thinking about it because you mentioned a couple of folks. You think about Seth Godin, you start thinking about Gary Vaynerchuk. Those folks have been in the trenches already,
Yeah.
and they're not overnight successes. Brand new creators, brand new storytellers, brand new entrepreneurs think that I can get out there tomorrow. I can get out there tonight, spin up a YouTube channel, spin up a podcast, or do this, and
Yep.
in 2-3 weeks,
Yeah.
I'm hosting
Patience.
conferences. I'm rolling
Yeah.
in the dough. I'm writing books.
Yeah.
I'm on the Amazon and the Audible bestseller. All of that. No,
Yeah. That's not how that
Like
works.
Mr. Godin said, 3 more years. Let's talk
Yeah.
in 3 more years and see where you are then. So
Yeah.
that's good stuff. That's good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
And there's a great book by Mark Schaefer. It's called Known, and he breaks down like 5 steps of like if you want to build your personal brand.
yeah,
And he talks about he's like find your place, which is sort of the thing that you want to be known for. Find your space, which is the way like what's your platform?
yeah.
Instagram, podcasting, blogging, whatever. So find your place, find your space, create consistent content, right? That's step 3. Step 4, engage with your audience. And step 5, be patient. It's going to take
It's that
longer than you
last one.
think.
It's that
Yeah,
last
that's
one
right.
is the one that we're in
Yeah.
each other's way.
Yeah.
Um, you keep dropping stuff, man, and I keep just deviating. I'm not even gonna look at my notes. I'll get to this other stuff here in a second.
Whatever, man.
Um,
I'm good.
because I think this is critical as well, and this gets in our way from again curators, folks in new media, um, finding that place, that platform. You mentioned that, right? Because there's so much happening, and
Mhm.
the attention span of this social media economy is so
Yeah.
short. Where do you go?
Yeah.
Where do you resonate? Where do you park and sit? Do you park and sit in YouTube on video? Do you park
Mhm.
and sit with audio podcasts or with the old school WordPress blog? Right. Or do you try to hang out with all the kids and try to be hip and do the
Yeah.
Snapchats and the TikToks and the what else are they doing now? I don't all of that. Do you
Yeah.
try to stay on all the platforms or Twitch? That was the one. That's where the
Okay.
kids are.
Love it.
Listen,
Love it.
I'm 52 years old, man. I don't all I know is a couple of things. But how do you tell folks that are starting or kind of intermediately into social
Mhm.
uh, media marketing world to resonate? Do you tell
Yeah.
them to focus on a particular platform or try to spread out and be more generalist and go to as many as you can, following trends and things of that nature? And again, this is somewhat of a setup question, but
Right.
I really want to hear your commentary.
Yeah, when I'm advising people, I say pick a lane. And pick a lane that you are most passionate about, because we've talked about it as this conversation's gone on. There's going to be a time that it gets hard, when you get tired of doing it, when you don't feel like doing the thing that you said you do every Monday. And I think by picking a platform that you're most passionate about, you're most likely to keep going, right? And oh, by the way, you're probably going to be better at it too. So if you are a photographer, I think Instagram makes sense. If you love to write, people will say blogs are dead. I think that's bullshit. I think if you are creating good content that delivers value on a consistent basis, then I think you're going to have success. Now, if you're in video and you are having some success on Facebook and you want to make the jump to TikTok because it there's a easy bridge to jump, okay, fine. But I believe that you start in one place, get really good at that, build your platform out from that, and then you can jump into those other platforms if that
Mm,
makes sense.
yeah,
Like I started in video. That was my background was in video. That's why Delivering Marketing Joys on video, the Monday Minutes on video. Like right now, then people came and said, "Hey, can you make this a podcast?" Which was
yeah,
really easy. And then, I actually like to write. So then it became a thing. But if you are an introvert and you don't want to be, on video, podcasting, if you still like to talk, writing, pick the thing that you are most passionate, most comfortable with. And then you can always branch out.
yeah.
But there are a lot of people who've made a lot of money just writing, right?
That's
Like
true.
you think of Seth Godin and Ann
Yeah,
Handley and all those people. I'm like, I'll read anything they write because they're more thoughtful than me. They're really smart. And if the content is good, if the content is valuable, the audience will find you.
Oh, it's good. Ladies and gentlemen, are you got your pens and paper out too? Re- Pause and rewind, right? Just right now. We'll still be here. But listen, Kirby is dropping them on you today, folks. And I like the fact again that you're saying there should be no excuse, right? Because
Yeah,
again, if
right.
you're intimidated by video, write something. If
Yeah,
you're
don't do it. Yeah,
intimidated by the sound of your voice, okay, then go on video. Or right
yeah.
there is no,
Options.
you don't have to learn HTML anymore. You don't have to learn how to code a website. You can either go in WordPress, you can go to Squarespace. Right? There are platforms that automate
Yeah,
all of that manual activity that we had to do decades ago. So again, there's no excuse for not having access to the infrastructure to do what it is that you want to do to share your story. If you've got a story Medium, right? I mean, all of those
yeah.
blogging platforms as well. If you don't like
Yeah,
WordPress, if you don't
LinkedIn.
like Square, LinkedIn has newsletters and things of like that. So the access to the ability to share that message with your community is there, and it's only
Yeah.
getting better every single day, and it's only getting more uh, accessible every single day as well. So I love that.
And I'll tell you, James, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
like I want to bring up, I talk about this a decent amount, and I want to give shout out because Bill was listening, but Bill was one of the creators of this. When I talk about the 4 C's of content,
Yes.
where you want content to be creative, you want it to be consumable, you want it to be consistent, and we've talked about a couple of those things, and you need to have courage, right? And I think, you want it to be creative, and
Yeah.
creative is subjective. But what I mean, and what I think Bill and I mean, is that you are providing value to the end user, whoever that is. It's creative. It's answering questions. If there's value to it. Consumable, to me, that's actually got to be, let you off the hook a little bit. You don't have to write a 10,000 word blog post,
Right.
right? It can be 300 words. It doesn't have to be a 4-hour podcast like Joe Rogan. It can be 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Like it doesn't have to be, make it consumable and then make it consistent, which we've talked about. And I think, again, what Jeremy talks about, whatever, like there are going to be challenges, and it will take courage to put yourself out there. But if you can fight through those things and you can have the courage to consistently create consumable content, that you're going to be ahead of the game.
Man, that's great. That's right there. Perfect segue into these individuals or these categories, these types of content
Yeah.
creators. You have 4 types of content creators that you've spoken about, and I laugh and smile and giggle and smirk. They're real good. They're really good, and I'd love for you to go down in no particular order, or maybe if it's a specific order, the way you've got them, and let's talk a little bit about why you think there are these 4,
Mm-hmm.
and how to graduate from either of those particular types, if that's what you want to do, if that's what you as
Yeah.
the creator wants to do, if you don't mind. So
Yeah.
I'll let you take it from this point.
Yeah. So I would say the first 3 are creator, curator, and teacher.
Yeah.
And I would say the first 3, you're good on any of them, right? So the creator is sort of the person that creates sort of original content. They're the original thinkers. They're the people who make you think. They challenge the status quo. They challenge the thought process in whatever industry you are. I use Seth Godin as that. He is literally a creator. He is creating his blog post every single day. For those who don't know who Seth Godin is, he writes a blog post every day. I think it's been 9-10 years.
It's been a
Every
while.
single day.
I've been subscribed for about 6 years. So yeah.
Okay. But every day he shows up. Now, sometimes that blog post is 2 sentences, right?
Yeah.
But he shows up. He's a creator, and he makes me think, and he challenges status quos. And so to me, that's that's sort of the ultimate of what I would like to be. But it's not the only place that adds value in content. So there's the curator. So the curator is the person who creates content that shares sort of other content. So as an example might be like, hey, you create a video that says, these are the 3 books that every entrepreneur should read.
Mm-hmm.
And then you sort of give hey, this is why this one's good, this one's good. And you could do that in a blog post. The platform doesn't matter. We talked about that earlier. It could be a podcast, it could be a blog, whatever. but you are giving credit to the original content creator. Hey, this is a book from Seth Godin. This is Gary Vee. This is James Hicks. These are the places that you need to read. And so you're curating other content and you're putting it together. That adds value. Teacher is the third one. And so they're kind of similar, but let's say that I read a book. Here are the 5 lessons I learned from that book.
Yeah.
So you are teaching, you're taking lessons that maybe other people, you're condensing it and you're giving it. And I believe that good content creators in different times are all 3 of these things.
Yes.
Right. That's my goal is to be all 3 of these things. Sometimes I'm just going to say something that'll make you think, hopefully. But there are many times that I'm going to create things and you're like, well, okay, that's a little bit trivial, but it does drive me to other content creators. And so those are the first 3. There's the creator, the curator, and the teacher.
Okay.
And the fourth
So before you go into the fourth, because the fourth is kind of, you dropping it on them. And I like the fact that you say, and I highly agree with this as well. There's nothing wrong with being either one of those 3 at any different time of your journey, or maybe even at the same stage of your journey, just different means of sharing that particular piece of content. Right.
Yeah. Well,
if I'm the creator, I'm the original creator, boom, then I'll put that out there and it's fantastic. If there's something that Kirby has written, like you're saying, let me spread that work and the word from that original creator. There's value in that because I bring my own perspective. You are you and I am me. So I can still tell your story while ad-libbing and telling my story and adding on maybe that additional layer of information. The teacher piece, we're starting to. Tell me this. Do you believe this? We're starting to see more and more folks that are ebbing into kind of the teacher, right? Yeah. If there was no real blessing, but if there was any blessing of COVID, it was the fact that folks were home, folks were in front of their computers or whatever, Zoom and WebEx and whatever. But for a creator and entrepreneur perspective, we got to focus and hone in on what it was we were trying to do.
Yeah.
And we saw a lot more folks coming out and saying, I'm going to do a tutorial. I'm going to show you how to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to, I have some expertise. I want to show you how to do this. So we saw a lot more folks coming out and teaching, and that's still happening today, which is amazing. And I like the fact that, again, you've got those top 3. And again, we can be one of those 3 at any given particular time within our journey. So.
Well, and the thing is, James, I think that if you are creating consistent content, right, there's going to be times where you're like, okay, I have this original thought on Tuesday, but on Thursday, I'm like, you know what? I just read this great book and I want to say, hey, here's a few, recently, and I've been doing this a lot lately with this book. So John Acuff, I read a lot of books, sorry. But John Acuff wrote the book Soundtracks. And I find myself quoting a very specific lesson he has where he, the concept of the book is that we all have the voice in our head that we've talked about, right? And often it's a soundtrack that's playing in our mind all the time, right? And sometimes those are broken soundtracks. They don't serve us and they don't help us reach the life we want. And so he has 3 questions that he has you ask yourself when you have one of these thoughts. Is it true? Is it helpful? And is it kind? And asking those thoughts, or asking those 3 questions of the thoughts in your life, it's amazing how many don't pass that 3-question test.
Yeah.
So you think I'm a bad person. Is it true? Well, I don't know. Sometimes I'm a bad person, but sometimes I'm a good person. I don't know if it's true or not. But is it helpful? Not particularly. Mm-hmm. Is it kind? Would you say it to your friend when you're trying to help them? No. And so when it doesn't pass that 3-question test, it doesn't add value. So what I would say to you is that is me taking John Acuff's lesson, teaching, and then saying, you should really buy the book because he goes into it deeper. Right. And so I think that you can kind of bridge it depending on the day.
Awesome. I will put links in the description and in show notes to all of these books that Kirby's talking about, folks. Right. and also because I'm the audio guy, I will put links to Audible or something of that as well. Yeah. Hopefully they're available there. All right. Let's get into number 4. Let's get into this other person that we want to talk about. Yeah.
So we've mentioned the first 3, the curator, the creator, and the teacher. Yeah. And the 4th type is just the thief, man. Oh. That's the, and I don't know how you are, James, but I have been pretty blessed that I haven't run into a ton of this, but you see people talking about, hey, someone took my whole post or took my whole paper and they've put their name on it and they're publishing it on LinkedIn as if it's theirs.
Yeah.
And man, number one, it's just bad karma. It's bad content.
It will come
You're
back
going
to
to
you.
get found
Yeah.
out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But the other thing is, it's lazy and you don't need to be, right? Because if you just do the curator piece,
Yeah.
right? If you just say, hey, James Hicks published this white paper and I think it's great, and here are the couple things that I thought were great about it. Now you're not a thief and you are giving you credit, and I think you get more validation long term, which is what, the give first economy is all about, is like you're playing a long game, right?
Yeah.
If you're trying to play a short game, that's when you tend to get yourself in trouble. So don't be a thief, which, I think we all learned in kindergarten, right? But the reality is we still see people doing it. But I think it's one of those moments where it's a short-term play that costs you dearly in the long term.
Perfect. And see, that's the perfect tie-in into the book as well. It's almost like you've done this before, right? It's almost like you've done these interviews before. But now you see where my crazy mind is going. I wanted to have that dialogue about all of the backstory, right?
Yeah.
And then talk about, okay, so we as the creators, we as the entrepreneurs, we as the business owners, we want to push information. And don't just think when we're talking about content creation, folks, that we're just talking about videos, audio, and text, right? I know we've mentioned that, but again, it's also products and services and its value to your community. So think of really broaden the definition of a content creator for the long term. And again, so now back to the book, right? The Give First Economy. If the idea is to be intentional, I want to use that word again because you've used that word, be intentional in the fact that if you're being consistently available to your community, available to your community, and what you're pushing out there resonates with their needs as opposed to always just your needs, and you're doing it for the long term, more positive than negative is going to come out of those efforts.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
The analogy, and I totally know that you agree with what I'm about to say, just based on what I see with your studio, and like he has the envy of everybody, right? Like studio, it's just awesome. But I'm a believer that we have to think like a media company.
Yes.
Right.
100%, 200%.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you look at your content journey like a media company, that helps, I think, because just about every channel, right, that we follow, they create original content. There's some content on it. There's some reruns, right? So there's the original. There's the curator because it's a rerun of The Big Bang Theory or whatever, right? And then there's you've got maybe some educational stuff, but then they've got ads.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. But if it were a TV channel that all it was ads, I mean, I suppose I'll give you the Home Shopping Network as the exception to the rule, but I don't watch that channel.
Me neither.
But,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Most of them, it's like you provide value, you entertain, you do good things for them, you teach them things, and then go, hey, and now it's time for me to give you an offer that you probably are interested in because you followed this journey of content all along.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that when you view it through that lens, then I think it really allows you to create a customer journey where customers come into you and already trust you. They're excited to buy from you. And I can't overstate this idea. And I know I said it once already. I can't overstate the idea that when people come to me now, often it's not never, but it's often not a question of whether they're going to buy. You called me, dude.
Yes. Yes.
You called me. It's a question of what I'm going to recommend. And because I am truly doing it with the intent to serve, I'm going to say, well, look, these are the two options based on what you've told me. You already trust me. And trust is the biggest challenge that we have in sales, right? And so once you already trust me, it's not a question of whether you're going to buy. It's a question of what you're going to buy. And by the way, you're also going to be more forgiving of mistakes. You're going to be willing to pay a little bit more because I'm the industry expert, right? And I think that that's where creating a content journey like this adds so much value. It's really powerful, But as you know, James, it's not a short-term play.
True.
That's what people get mixed up on content is they think, okay, it's like an email blast. I'm going to hit this button. I'm going to hit publish and orders are going to fly into
and
my
just
inbox.
wait, right? And just wait. Yeah. No.
It's much more like a relationship, right? You didn't go out with your wife the first time, take her on one date, and all of a sudden you're getting married. It takes time.
Oh, it took time.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Best sales job I ever did.
Man, still working at it after 22 years, still working at it. But it's all good.
But that's the customer journey, right? Is that you provide value, and then at some point you ask them to marry you.
God, it's good. So let me tail in off of that, and then we'll go into kind of some value proposition and things that you're offering to the community. So, folks, I'm looking over here and I see a ton of folks on Twitter. I appreciate you. I love my Twitter community, how engaged we are. But you can't comment unless you're either on LinkedIn, YouTube, or where else are we? I think we're on Facebook too. But so
Cool.
Definitely watch over there. But open up another browser in YouTube. What was I going to say? God, the fact that you build that relationship, and I've used the term already during this conversation about the trusted advisor. So I like how you kind of alluded to that as well. We should not be apprehensive to asking folks who see us as that subject matter expert, as that trusted advisor when it comes to financial transactions.
Yeah.
It's almost like solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, folks who are just starting in business are scared to ask for the money.
Oh, sure.
Right. It's not a negative connotation to ask for compensation for your expertise. Again, because exactly what you were talking to, folks are coming to you because you have shown yourself to be that expert, to be that advisor, to have just 1% more knowledge about something particular than we do. So let us not be apprehensive about charging appropriately for our services. And let's not be apprehensive to asking for that PO or asking for that, or submitting that invoice. That really, we need to get out of our own way from that perspective as well.
And it's hard. Let's just be honest, right? It is one of those where, and I was blessed in the sense that I was in sales, straight commission sales first.
Okay.
But it's fascinating to me. And I say this, I bring it up to say that as entrepreneurs, as content creators, of course it's hard. Purebred salespeople struggle with asking for the close, right?
Yeah.
Even the best salespeople, that's the thing that you got to get over. And I remember having a conversation that was not something I struggled with. I had a bunch of issues, but after about a couple months, I came to this conclusion. If I have sat with you, if I've called you, I've set up an appointment, I've come to your office and we've had 45 minutes or I've asked you questions. I've done this, I've done that. And I get to the end and I just get up and leave. I have wildly wasted your time.
Yeah.
Right. Like the close was natural to me because I'm like, well, if I don't ask them, then I've been disrespectful to their calendar.
Makes sense.
Right now, I think the key is to figure out a way that you can gracefully ask without feeling like you're falling all over yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think for me, it was just about saying, okay, what's the next step? And helping them choose, helping them help me close, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I do.
Right?
That makes
sense. Say,
sense.
okay, so we've talked about this. We've come up with a couple of different solutions. Which one makes the most sense to you? So in other words, it's not the, so what do I got to do to get you to sign today?
It's not the Mont Blanc out there. It's check writing season. No, not necessarily that.
It's just which one of these makes the most sense to you based on what we talked about. And then that helps them help you close the conversation.
I like that. Because it almost, and I'm going to summarize, I think it's more of a learned experience as opposed to something that's innate.
Yeah,
maybe there's 0.5% of folks that ability is innate, but that's a learned experience through trial and error of knowing when to position or knowing when to pitch, knowing when to present. Okay, next steps is now we move forward with this relationship, not just this transaction. The transaction is one and done, but let's talk more from the relation perspective, and that's where the value is. That's where you'll get the pens out and you'll start signing long-term deals with. With Hasseman marketing. Let's put this picture on here, ladies and gentlemen. That's what this guy is doing. Hold on. Let's put look at this squad here. Let's talk about this squad here.
These are the folks that make me look good. These are the folks that make me look good.
You
Yeah.
know, look
So
at that. Without a marketing team, you're wasting money. You don't look right. You're overwhelmed. All those bad things. So, there's
yeah.
a squad out here that can help you out with this.
No, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that. It's funny. People talk to me all the time. How do you get all this stuff done? And obviously, I do because it's a priority, right? But the other reason it happens is because I've surrounded myself with people who help me and are talented and who challenge me. And when you have that, both inside of your company and then also, your friends and peers outside and in the industry, that's when success really starts to take off because you can multiply yourself, right? There's only so much you can do by yourself. And so having a team is powerful.
Love it. Love it. Uh, we talked about the book to
Yeah.
an extent. I should have talked about it more, but gosh, we
We cover some
but
ground.
that's all right because have we got an opportunity for folks um, to take some of the principles, take some of the ideas and the concepts that we've talked about today and learn them for yourself.
Mhm.
How about that? So, Kirby, I'm gonna have you dive into it. I'm gonna bring up one site. This is where
Okay.
I bought. This is where I got the book from. Right
Okay.
here.
Okay.
This again. I'm an audio person, so
Yep.
did I
Love
give
it.
it a review? Oh, look at that! There, I did. I gave it the 5-star review, and I didn't just do
Thank you.
that because I was going to talk to you. I already gave it the 5-star review. Golly.
I
Uh,
appreciate you.
but the Give First Economy, folks. This is the book here available in Audible, Amazon, all that good stuff. But for the fine folks of perspectives and focus.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this right here. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to, I think we talk a lot about giving first, and I think one of those things where you're like, yeah, yeah, give first, but you want to sell me a book. Well, great news. I'm not going to try and sell you a book, so you can check this out for yourself. We've set up a page where you can get the ebook just because it's easier for me to deliver. But the ebook, it's the whole book for free. You go to hassemanmarketing.io/give first, and we will email you a copy of the book for free. And so I'd love it if you'd check that out, and hopefully it provides you some value.
Awesome. Man, I cannot say how much I appreciate this. And folks, yeah, definitely go there, download the ebook. You provide a little bit of information, and Kirby and Squad will make sure that you have that in your inbox. Put that on on your gym playlist. That's where I finished the book while I was underneath the squat rack, to be honest with you. So I
That's
finished it
impressive.
a couple of weeks ago doing that. And again, I'm going to say I know it's going to bring value to folks. It's going to have just those nuggets of information to, as we've talked about the concept of getting out of your own way, uh, ensuring that what you do from a delivery perspective to a community, to your clients, to your prospects, to your partners, personal and professional,
Yeah.
right? Make sure you're doing it with intention. So, I mean, all of those statements really matter. We're not just saying words that sound great as sound clips, but these really are the concepts that Kirby has talked about in this book. And it's very straightforward. It's very commonsensical. Is that a word?
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
I think so.
Okay. Today it's a word. Commonsensical is a word today. But it really resonates with anyone at any particular stage of their evolution and of their growth. Mm. And
Thank you.
I really found value in that. So again, I talked about it on a couple of other shows, and I wanted to have you on to have this conversation, man. And selfishly, this was again for me.
Yeah.
I hope
Well, I've
everyone else
enjoyed it,
got
man.
some value out of this, but man, this was really for me to have this dialogue with you, so we can have just some of that shared experience.
Mm.
The comments are amazing because I like when folks are responding and getting value. I know that there are a number of other folks that are watching and listening that may be hesitant, right,
Mm.
to
Mhm.
have their name attached to a comment because they're at a stage or something, or they uh, intimidated by an audience and don't necessarily want to have all of their information out there. How can folks get in contact with you? Right. So maybe if you can provide some coaching or some additional dialogue, some one-on-one, is that even something that you do personally?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, if you search, luckily I have a fairly unique name, right? So if you search me on any of the platforms, Kirby Hasseman, if you Google me, I'm around. But Hasseman Marketing is a great place to start. That's our marketing agency. I also, that's HassemanMarketing.com. I have a website, KirbyHasseman.com. And so I put content and opportunity to speak and things like that on that as well. And then obviously the social media platforms, as you might expect, I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and Snapchat and all that good stuff.
Oh,
So
you're out there with all the kids. Now you're out there with
yeah.
all the cool kids. Okay, he
Well, it's
said so.
what I found with Snapchat was it was the best way to communicate with my daughters at one point.
Yeah.
And so I sort of fell in love with the platform so that I could tell them so that that they needed to take the trash out, and that was a way for them to listen. So
Dad is sending snaps to his kids to take out the trash.
that's absolutely
I
true.
hear you. I hear you. Man, this has been amazing. Pleasure is I really feel that the community, I'm not going to say I hope or I think, I know the community got some value out of this conversation. We're seeing it pop through right now. I mean, Jeremy's talking about it. We're seeing Bill talking about it as well. Mr. Alec Johnson in the future is talking about it. So listen, thank you guys for everything. Kirby, I thank you for the time. I thank you for the conversation, and I thank you for what it is that you produce. Right, I want to give you these flowers and say what you're doing resonates, brings value to the folks that are consuming that content. So I appreciate what it is that you do as well.
Thank you, and the pleasure's been mine, man. I really appreciate you having me on.
Thank you, sir. We will talk soon for sure, folks. Be good to yourself, and we will talk later. Take care.